Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Why do you use chairs up? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عدوان الا على الظالمين والعاقبة للمتقين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. So I kind of wish you would introduce the topic a little bit more. That's okay. Light at the end of the tunnel. That can mean a lot of things, but in essence, I personally, I think that in these types of gatherings, it's very helpful to have open discussion, open Q&A, that type of style. Which doesn't mean that I'm not going to give a lecture, but I'd like to focus more on that than anything. So inshallah ta'ala, I'll speak a little bit about what that means to me, and at least what stands out about that topic to me, the light at the end of the tunnel. Obviously, we talk a lot about the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah's tawbah. And at this point, it should be absolutely understood, although unfortunately it doesn't always translate in our actions and the way that we treat each other, but it should be absolutely understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His mercy supersedes His wrath and His anger. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not a difficult God. Okay? Meaning what we have to deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment is really good for us, because Imam Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he said, لو خيرت بين أن يحاسبني الله أو يحاسبني والدي لاخترت أن يحاسبني الله فإن الله أرحم بي من والدي. That if I was to choose, if I had a choice between choosing whether Allah holds me accountable on the Day of Judgment or whether my own two parents hold me accountable on the Day of Judgment, I would choose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's actually more merciful to me than my own two parents. It's a very powerful expression. Actually, if you look at the words Rahman and Rahim, they come from the word Rahmah, which actually comes from the word Rahim, which actually means motherly love. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah explained it, and also Imam al-Qayyim in his book Al-Aqsam, he explained it in a very powerful way, that the strongest expression of love and compassion and mercy that you can have in this world is motherly love, the way that a mother loves her child. And Allah loves you even more than that. And that's why when you look at Rahman and Rahim, and hopefully at least just in the few minutes that I have inshallah before we go to an open Q&A, when you look at Rahman and Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us that Rahman, He is absolutely merciful. Merciful to everyone. His mercy engulfs and encompasses disbelievers, encompasses animals, encompasses everything in this world. Every expression of mercy that we have is an expression in reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, that there are 100 mercies. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 100 portions of mercy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved 99 of those portions for the Day of Judgment, only one for this dunya. Okay, and so a lot of times we have this impression of Allah, we have this impression of God, and it's not just created in our culture, it's created obviously in Middle Eastern cultures and Southeast Asian culture, whatever it may be. This idea of Allah, as an angry, as being angry, as always throwing down lightning bolts and punishment only. But in essence, what this means, when you look at Rahman Rahim, Rahim means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful in the hereafter, specifically to the believers. So Rahman encompasses everything, and Rahim is specifically merciful. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا, that He is with the believers, Rahim. Because there's even an extra and added level of mercy that takes place in the hereafter. But in essence, understanding this from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how we can apply this in our daily lives, and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Many times seeing the light at the end of the tunnel does not mean that I should become lazier or that I should do less. It means that I should work harder to get to the end of the tunnel. Right? I should work harder to get to the end of the tunnel. Once I've recognized that there's a light there, that means I naturally have to move now. Okay, it doesn't mean I say, well, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, so I can sit here now and just wait for myself to somehow make it out of that tunnel. No, it means that you start moving because you recognize that there is hope. You recognize that the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is achievable, that Jannah is achievable, that the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is achievable, In fact, it's the norm. As Imam al-Qushayri rahimahullah said, that when a person leaves their home, they naturally go back to their home subconsciously. It's the norm that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates you, you go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you go back to Jannah, and you do things, whenever you commit sins, at least especially the major sins, because the minor sins are wiped away in our salah, they're wiped away in our wudu. We're forgiven for those through various practices, right? Reading Surah Al-Kahf on Fridays, for example. Rasulullah ﷺ said, as-salatu ila as-salah, salah to salah, jum'ah to jum'ah, hajj, for example. There are many ways of expiation, right? Many ways to purify ourselves in that way. But at the same time, if you put obstacles between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are the one that is turning away from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we always try to blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when bad things happen in our lives, or when we feel like we're in a sinful position or whatever it is. We try to blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the circumstances, right? Allah put me in this position, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did this to me. That person had it easier. It was easier for that person to be a good Muslim. They went to Islamic school, or they had Muslim parents, or they had good friends around them. It was easier for that person. It was easier for that person, right? We always blame our circumstances, and we make it seem as if Allah didn't give us a fair chance sometimes. Or we're in this country, it's hard to be a good Muslim, it's hard to practice Islam in this country, right? We try to make those types of excuses, but at the end of the day, the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلَّ أُمَّتِي يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَبَى. Everyone from my ummah enters paradise except for the one who refuses. He said, Ya Rasulullah, how can a person refuse paradise? Right? How can you possibly refuse paradise? He said, when you disobey the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you refuse paradise. Because what Allah and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us is it is very much applicable, okay, to our lives. It's something that's tangible, it's something that can be practiced, and it's something that is not, it's not impossible. It never becomes impossible. When it becomes impossible, you're forgiven for that. Right? You're forgiven for not being able to apply something when it's impossible, or when you're under compulsion, or when you forget, or something of that sort. But for the most part, it's really not that hard. Right? It's really not that hard. And that's why Rasulullah ﷺ said that the last conversation that Allah would have with the disbeliever on the Day of Judgment, or a person who's headed for doom, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ask him, if you could sacrifice the entire world, give the entire world, ransom yourself by giving the entire world in gold to me, to get yourself out of this situation, would you do it? And of course, yeah, definitely, I'll do it. I'll give you the entire world in gold. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that these people would even be willing to throw their children in the fire to get themselves out of that situation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, لَقَدْ سَأَلْتُ مِنْكَ أَهْوَنَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. I asked you for a lot less than that. I didn't ask you for the entire world in gold. I asked you to pray 5 times a day, to do the mandatory things, to avoid the major sins, and to avoid even the minor sins intentionally. The ones that you'll naturally do, you can be forgiven for those when you work, when you make tawbah, when you do your salah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will overlook those. But I asked you for so much less than that. Allah is really not asking us for a lot at the end of the day. And in fact, there's a hadith which I feel like is particularly profound, and it's narrated by 2 great Sahaba with authentic chains. It's narrated 5 times, but the two Sahaba that it comes with authentic chains, Mu'adh ibn Jabal and Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with them both. Both of them had an incident where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man qala la ilaha illallah, harrama Allahu alayhi an-nar." Whoever says la ilaha illallah, Allah has forbidden the fire from them. And Mu'adh radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, "But ya Rasulullah, should I go and tell people this? Should I go and spread the news that if you say la ilaha illallah, you're good?" And the Prophet ﷺ said, "No, فَإِذَنْ يَتَّكِهُ." Said, "No, because then they'll become lazy and complacent." They'll become lazy and complacent. يَتَّكِهُ. They'll just relax then. We're good. We say la ilaha illallah. And in essence, you'll see people, right, in many other faiths, this is a creed, this is a theology. Right? As long as you acknowledge blank, then you're protected. As long as you acknowledge blank, you're fine. Right? Do whatever you want, but as long as you acknowledge blank, you're okay. So, generally speaking, non-committal religions and movements and theologies will always be successful, at least in the temporary run. right? At least in the short run. Whether it's progressive Islam, which is a cop-out. Again, we'll just take the things that we like from the Quran, we'll ignore the things that require commitment from us, and we'll just deny the legitimacy of hadith, or make interpretations of the Quran that haven't existed for 1400 years to get ourselves out of this situation. Or in Christianity, non-denominational Unitarianism, right? Or more than that, I'm spiritual but not religious. That's a cop-out. Right? That's a cop-out. That's basically saying, I don't want to commit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on His terms, I want to commit on my terms. I'll do some nice things here, I'll do some volunteer work, I'll give some charity, I'll give some time, but I don't actually want to have to commit to anything. And that's what really, really, really shows that you're actually working for something, that you actually believe in something. Because a lot of times we do good things because of the good feeling that doing good things naturally produces. You naturally feel good when you do good things, right? But the things that will require sacrifice, and we talked the entire day about Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. How many of you were here for Umar ibn Abdul Aziz today, just so I know? Not many of you actually. Well, half of you I'd say. Alright? You have to make sacrifices when you believe in something. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want you to become lazy, and the Prophet ﷺ doesn't want you to become lazy and complacent with your situation. There has to be a sense of urgency. Okay, or else all of that falls apart. You don't know what situation you're going to die upon. All of it falls apart if there's no sense of urgency. But is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willing to work with you to get you to Jannah? Yes. And that's why you look at all of these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that reflect the absolute and infinite mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rahman, Rahim, Ghafoor. Ghafoor means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ghufran literally means something like when you cover up a pot. When you cover up a boiling pot. And Mighfar comes from the word shield too. Right? Or helmet. I'm sorry, Mighfar is helmet. So literally it's covering something up. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is willing to cover something up. And you know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't hold you accountable for it at all. If you look at the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, whoever has a good intention and follows it up with a good deed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes for him what? 10 good deeds, and another narration up to 700, up to whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to multiply it by. Good intention, you follow it up with action. Right? Sincere, righteous intention, you do the righteous deed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies it for you. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever has a good intention but doesn't follow up with the good action, what does Allah write for him? You guys need to interact a little bit better than this. I'm more tired than all of you, I guarantee you. One good deed, or actually it's finals week, I'm sorry. One good deed. You get the good deed written for you. And Rasulullah ﷺ said that if you have a bad intention, you follow up that bad intention with a sin, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala write? One sin. Allah is not going to multiply it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to say, well, this sin really, really, really upset me, so I'm going to be particularly angry about this. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never transgresses. Okay? If you commit a sin, you face that. If Allah doesn't forgive you for that sin, you face the exact punishment of that sin. Allah is not going to multiply it or anything of that sort. And Rasulullah ﷺ said that if a person intends something bad, but doesn't end up doing that bad deed, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Does Allah write it against him? No. What does Allah do? He writes you a good deed. That part of the hadith is just mind-blowing. Because imagine if somebody told you, imagine if somebody showed up at your doorstep and had a baseball bat in their hand and said, look, I was coming to your house to bust up your car, and I changed my mind, I felt bad about it, so I just wanted to let you know. And then that person goes, well, let me pay for your gas. It's not going to happen, right? But that's how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. You intended to do something bad, but along the way you held yourself, you restrained yourself. Allah recognizes you made a sacrifice there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes that sincerity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you even with that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you. SubhanAllah. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah tells us that on the day of judgment, the 7 that are shaded under the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day when there is no shade except for that shade. One of them is رَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ إِمْرَأَ ذَاتَ حَسْبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. A young man that was called by a woman of great beauty and status, and he held himself back and said, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not just restricted to men, or not just, it's when a person holds themselves back. They make a legitimate and valid sacrifice for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if you intended bad, even if you were going to commit a sin. You were going to commit a sin, and then you stopped yourself. Not only does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not hold it against you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually rewards you for stopping yourself in your tracks. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said in Sunan at-Tirmidhi, and one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Halim. Allah is forbearing. Forbearing. Meaning what? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to strike us every time we mess up right away, you know how much trouble we'd be in if Allah didn't give us chances? But Allah is forbearing. So the Prophet ﷺ said in Sunan at-Tirmidhi that whenever a servant sins, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the angel on the left to withhold his pen for 6 hours. So if he makes tawbah, it's as if it never got docked down in the first place, and in fact he'd get rewarded for the istighfar part. Think about that for a moment. If you commit the sin, and then 6 hours passes, a day passes, 2 days passes, whatever, 2 years passes, 3 years, and then you make tawbah for it. Rasulullah said, "At-ta'ibu min adh-dhanb kaman la dhanba lah." The one who repents from a sin is like the one who never sinned before. It's wiped off your record. And Rasulullah said that on the Day of Judgment, while a person is reading their sins, and 99 scrolls are laid out in front of their eyes. This is in Bukhari. 99 scrolls laid out in front of a believer's eyes of his sins, and he's reading his sins, and his face is changing colors because he thinks he's doomed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, did you seek forgiveness for this? And when he says yes, all of those sins start to turn into good deeds, until the person would say to Allah, "Oh Allah, I've committed another sin that the angel forgot to write down." And the Prophet ﷺ here is telling us with that hadith that if a person sins and then repents right away, the sin is never written down, but the good deed of istighfar is. It's a piece of cake, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you something. He's giving you something easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the day wants two things from us. A recognition of His perfection and our own imperfection. And number two, some sort of effort. Some sort of effort that on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with those 99 portions of mercy that we haven't even begun to experience, can use for our cause. Two examples from the Sunnah. One of them, Rasulullah says, and this is in Abu Dawood and At-Tirmidhi, that a person shows up on the Day of Judgment. The first thing they'll be asked about is what? Salah, their prayer. And if it is deficient, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks the angels, did he pray any sunnah prayers, any voluntary prayers? If the answer is yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings those voluntary prayers and starts to patch up your salah for you. You don't ask Allah for that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your judge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making these excuses for you. We'll bring the voluntary prayers on. Then Rasulullah said, once he's patched up his salah, he puts that to the side. What is his siyam? Let me see his fasting. When it's deficient, Allah says, has he had any voluntary fasting? Starts to patch up your fasting. And Rasulullah said, وَكَذَلِكَ الْأَعْمَالُ كُلُّهُ. And that's how all actions will be judged. Allah brings forth, Allah sees your deficiency, Allah starts to patch it up for you. Another one, which is when Rasulullah told us about the man that that asked for his children to burn him to ashes, to cremate him when he passed away. And this man is saying to his children, I'm afraid that Allah is going to catch me. He's done nothing in his life, and so he knows now, he has a realization that he's going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so go ahead and cremate him. So Rasulullah says, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings him back together, and Allah raises him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, why did you do what you did? And he would say, Ya Rabb, khashaytuka wa anta a'lam. I was afraid of you and you know better. You know I was afraid of you. That's why I did it. You know my heart. You know my intention was that I was afraid of you. I was trying to escape you. What did the Prophet ﷺ say happens? Anybody? No? You guys are really, really, really tired. Allah forgives him. Anything else? Any other component to the hadith? Let me tell you what the Prophet ﷺ said. Rasulullah ﷺ said, فَغَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بِذَلِكَ. Allah forgave him because of that. The only good deed he had was that he cremated himself, which is haram. But Allah recognized the sincere intention, and Allah recognized the man's heart, and that was the only excuse that could be made for him on the Day of Judgment. Allah used that excuse for him. SubhanAllah. Allah used that excuse for him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know the stories that we've heard throughout our Sunday school and khutbahs. I'm giving you stuff that you already know here. We know these stories, but the point that I'm trying to convey again is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not difficult. Man qala la ilaha illallah harram Allahu alayhi an-nar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not hard to deal with. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. And He's al-wadud. He's loving. He's compassionate. These are the types of things that Allah wants us to know Him about. Now, as far as how that works with our individual lives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala conveys to us, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, don't despair. Never despair from the mercy of Allah. There is no reason why you should ever feel like Allah won't forgive you. You know, a person, subhanAllah, I remember a person who really did some really bad stuff. You're saying, how could I ever meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again? And you know, it's like I'm telling him, like, it's because of you there is al-Ghafur. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes are reflected in His creation. It's because of you that there is al-Ghafur. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy. No matter what you did, Allah will forgive you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes one thing very clear. Right after saying that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places a sense of urgency. وَأَنِيبُوا. Anibu means change course. Anibu does not mean astaghfirullah. Anibu means change course. Literally, turn around. وَأَنِيبُوا إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ وَأَسْلِمُوا لَهُ. And submit to Him. مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يَأْتِيَكُمُ الْعَذَابُ ثُمَّ لَا تُنْصَرُونَ. Before punishment arrives, it reaches you. It's already on its way to you because you're on a course right now. You're on a collision course with punishment because of the sin. Turn around. Make a U-turn. Before that punishment arrives to you, and then you will not be helped. وَاتَّبِعُوا أَحْسَنَ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يَأْتِيَكُمُ الْعَذَابُ بَغْتَةً وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. And follow the best guidance of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to you before the punishment comes to you while you're not even paying attention. So Allah connected here. Again, ignoring guidance, a person becomes heedless. You would be caught completely off guard by that punishment. وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. And you didn't see it coming. Again, the idea here is changing course. Changing course, a sense of urgency. And you know what, when we read in the stories of the Sahaba, like we read about Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and you read about Umar, and let me ask you guys a question. And I tried this in Baltimore, and I got a 50-50 response. Let's see if it works here. How many of you are more inspired to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by verses of mercy and Jannah and paradise? Raise your hand. How many of you feel more inclined to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you come across verses of punishment and hellfire, and you get scared? The fear of that motivates you. Same thing, 50-50. SubhanAllah, I did this in Baltimore, big convention. It was like an exact 50-50. You know why? Because different Sahaba, we find even in the Sahaba, different Sahaba were motivated by different things. Okay? Some Sahaba, Surah Al-Rahman, Jannah, right? Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. That's what motivated them. That's what pushed them. They loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much. There was actually a raw love there that the threat of punishment wasn't necessary. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said about Suhaib al-Rumi radiallahu anhu, he said, لَوْ لَمْ يَخَافُ اللَّهَ لَمْ يَعْصِهِ. Even if he didn't fear Allah, he would never disobey Him. He would never dare. He loved Allah too much to disobey Him. So even if he feared Him, it wouldn't, even if he didn't fear Him, it wouldn't make a difference in his life. But some people, hey, they need that. They need to come across those ayat about fear, and they need to recognize that there is a chance of failure, because some people are motivated by that. Because as long as the fear of failure doesn't cause you to despair and not move, but when it places a sense of urgency on you, that's a good thing. That's just your personality type, right? Allah has created everyone different. Abu Bakr is different from Umar. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is the verses of Jannah guy. Umar radiallahu anhu is the verses of hell guy. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anhu, he said, I used to hear the Sahaba ask the Prophet ﷺ all the time about Jannah. Right? They always wanted to ask about Jannah. He said, me, I wanted to ask about hell and what leads a person to hell so I can avoid it. Right? Everyone is different. And you have to be able to find what places that sense of urgency on you. And you know, if someone is a bum in dunya, like a total bum and not getting anywhere in life, you don't go up to them and tell them, hey look, Obama just got elected again, buddy. You're good. Some welfare system's going to, you know, since we're going to become a socialist state by the end of his term, and you know, you'll be taken care of and everything's going to be okay. Good job. You know, you'll be all right. We'll take care of you. We got you covered. Or if you have a family member that's struggling and not doing anything with their lives because you're always taking care of them, you don't call them and say, look, I'm going to be there to take care of you all the time. Don't just keep doing what you're doing. Stay on the couch. It's all right. Don't you know I'm your brother, I'm your cousin, I'm your father, I'm your mother, I'm your son, I'm your daughter, I'm your best friend, I got your back. You don't do that. Because that person's a bum right now. They need to be kicked. They need to be told, look, if you don't get up and do something with your life right now, you're going to fail. The fear of failure needs to be instilled inside of them, or else there will be no sense of urgency and no sense of movement. Right? Rough people. You know, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu was Quraysh's version of like a hardcore redneck with a Ford truck, you know, living in the country of the Bedouin, who was really, really angry and really, really rough. And you know, that was Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu's thing. He was a roughneck. So Umar radiallahu anhu understood, I'm a rough guy, I need to be dealt with rough things. So he feared Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He feared, you know, when he read about hellfire, it scared him. That's how he brought himself back to earth. He humbled himself. Right? Because that's what he needed to be dealt with. Okay? He diagnosed himself properly. And that's the idea here. You need to understand that when Allah uses verses of hellfire, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that He is Aziz bintiqam, you know, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes. Allah is not doing that to make you scared to a point where you don't work and you're limited to inaction or disability. No, you don't despair from Allah. Despairing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is su'a dhann billah, is having bad thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's haram. You never despair from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You always know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is willing to forgive you. But at the same time, I need to work. I need to move. Again, light at the end of the tunnel. I've got to go to that light though. I can't just sit back. And you know what happens? And this is the funny thing about shaitan. This is how shaitan hits you. Before you commit a sin, shaitan comes to you and says, hey look man, it's all good. Allah's ghafur rahim, come on. Pats you on the back. Shaitan's the awesomest mufti of all time. Alright? When you've got an issue, he'll make it halal for you, package it up for you really nicely, tell you, look, you know, Allah is really cool, He'll take care of you, don't worry, you'll be alright. As soon as you commit the sin, shaitan goes, man, Allah's never going to forgive you, you're disgusting. What's wrong with you? Even I wouldn't have thought of that. You know? What is wrong with you? He comes to you with the exact opposite message. Tries to make you despair after you commit the sin, even though he comforted you before you committed the sin. Right? That's the da'wah of shaitan. Because you know something about shaitan? And this is something that's mind-blowing. The meaning of the word shaitan and iblis. Shaitan, what does it mean? Anyone ever wonder why his name is shaitan? Anybody know what it means? Please? Distance. Shaitan, shatana, means distance. They used to say bitrun shatun, a deep well. It literally means you dig yourself deep into a hole. You fail, and instead of getting out of the hole, you dig yourself deeper. Right? You messed up, you had a minor offense, and there are people like that in dunya that get accustomed to failure, right? There are people like that they spoil every opportunity they get in life because they've become accustomed to failure. They'll find a way to mess it up. Right? There are people like that in this world. And there are people like that with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala too. I messed up, oh well, might as well just go all out now. Right? There is a guy that talked to me a few weeks ago. And he told me I have a problem, I was helping him, he had a problem with pornography and stuff like that. So I was helping him, talking to him about it. And the other day we were playing basketball and he comes up to me and he says, I got to talk to you. And I'm like, all right, what's going on? So he talks to me, he says, he was telling me, I feel filthy when I commit this sin. And he said, I was feeling so bad the other night that I went and I got drunk. It's like, like first you were just watching pornography, and now you actually went and got drunk, right? It's like I was feeling so bad that the only way I could feel good is go get drunk. Like, all right, great. Why? Why? It's probably, he understood right away. Some people get accustomed to failure, unfortunately. Right? You mess up once, the train is already moving. I have no hope. Let me just keep going. So you keep digging yourself deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's exactly what Shaitan did. Because the Imam Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah said, if Shaitan asked Allah for forgiveness, Allah would have forgiven him. Right? I mean, what he did was forgivable. Shirk is forgivable if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. The worst offenses are forgivable if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he kept digging himself deeper in the hole. He said, قَالَ رَبِّ أَنظِرْنِي إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Oh Allah, grant me respite until the day of judgment. Okay, you've got that. Then he says, بِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. Because you led me astray. لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. I'm going to lead all of them astray too. You just had a chance here. You just had a chance. Right? But some people get accustomed to failure. So they keep going further and further and further. And the meaning of Iblis is hopelessness. Ablasa al-mublisun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the people of hellfire al-mublisun, means to be hopeless. Right? Now, does Shaitan ever feel bad about what he did? Does he ever feel bad about what he did? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says yes. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in Sahih Muslim, actually Shaitan cries about what he did sometimes. He sees people making sujood and he cries. And he says, أُمِرَ بِالسُّجُودِ فَاسْتَجَدْ وَأُمِرْتُ فَعَصَيْتُ. He was commanded and he did what he had to do. I was commanded and I disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what's the problem? Cries but doesn't do anything about it. Right? There are a lot of people like that. They despair, they get hopeless and helpless, and they don't make an effort to change their situation. Not even an effort. Right? So that's the idea here. You've got to try. You've got to have something to show on the Day of Judgment to say, oh Allah, I tried. I tried to be a good person. You didn't ask me for the entire world. You didn't ask me to be Superman. You didn't make everything haram. Everything was halal except for the few things that you made haram. Al-asl fil ashya' al-ibaha. Everything is halal unless Allah made it haram. You didn't make everything haram. You didn't make life impossible. Right? But here's what I have to offer, oh Allah. I know it's not much, but here's what I have to offer. And Imam Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he said, وَلِذَلِكَ سَمَّ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ الشَّكُورِ. Because of that, Allah named Himself the grateful. Allah is grateful. What does Allah have to be grateful for? And he said, because if you do the smallest thing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala magnifies it beyond imagination. Right? You make the smallest effort, small charity, a little salah on the side, something nice that you do for your parent. You do something so small for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blows it up in a good way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala magnifies it. Right? It's like, and I give this example, and I know not many of you are parents. Any of you are parents. But, when your kid comes home from school and cuts out this little heart from construction paper, and it, colors all out of the line and stuff like that, and says, cuts out I love you letters and tapes that to the heart. And then the L is all raggedy, and the L even falls off and it says I love you. And draws you the stick figure where you look deformed, and you've only got one leg, or you've got 3 ears for some reason, or 3 eyes, right? As a parent, when you look at that, you love it, you value it, right? When we used to do that stuff for our parents, and our parents would hang it up on the wall or something like that, it's not because we were exactly Picassos, right? It's not because we produced some masterpiece of art. It's because the parents recognized that behind that 23 cents of garbage and that construction paper, there was an effort that was made. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the same way. You come on the Day of Judgment and you present your raggedy beat up salah, jumping jacks, whatever you want to call them, not too much concentration, not too much khushu'. You've done a little bit of charity here or there. You did a nice thing for somebody for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You did a little bit of da'wah here. You present that raggedy body of work to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah makes it great. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes it and He appreciates it because He's ash-shakur. Because Allah recognizes, you know what, a sincere effort was made. But at the end of the day, that's not what's going to get you into Jannah. It's going to be Allah's mercy. It's going to be Allah's mercy. And I remember, I was sitting on an interfaith panel and we talked about this, and you've got two extremes here, sitting between a Christian and a Jew. We had a lot of good interfaith dialogues, by the way, because we'd be very honest and open about our differences in theology and things of that sort. And so we were talking about these differences. So the Christian ideology is that for God so loved the world that He sent His one and only Son, that whosoever believes in Him will not perish. John 3:16. Which in essence means that you attain salvation by acknowledging that Jesus died for your sins, and that's it. Right? Action is optional at that point. And the pastor was saying that. Action is good, but it's optional. At the end of the day, anyone who made that acknowledgement is free from responsibility. So a person who prayed 5 times a day, a person who did everything that they could do, a person that was trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but did not acknowledge that Jesus died for their sins is hopeless, helpless. Right? But acknowledge that Jesus died for your sins, you're good. Okay? On the Jewish side, it's completely action-based. And so I was listening to them discuss this, and I was sitting in the middle. Right? SubhanAllah. And it's completely action-based. Okay? God is portrayed as a very wrathful God in the Torah and in the Talmud. Okay? In fact, if you read the Old Testament, you will wonder why the heck anybody says anything about the Quran. Like, you'll be like, seriously? I remember once I had a friend in 8th grade, I showed him the Old Testament, I pointed out some verses, he's like, where is this Bible printed in Riyadh? And I was impressed that he knew where Riyadh was. But it's like, where was this printed in Riyadh? Couldn't believe it, right? Very wrathful, vengeful God. Okay? There is no concept of salvation or mercy. You've got to observe these strict set of laws, and that's it. And then you get in based on your actions. And then we find in Islam, you have a middle ground. You do what you can. You put your actions forward. But at the end of the day, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy in overlooking the flaws of those actions that will get you into paradise, but you still have to try your best. You still have to put your best foot forward. Right? And that's exactly what the middle path is. This is ummatan wasata for a reason. It's a balanced view. You try your best, but at the same time, you can't give Allah what He's given to you. Can you? It's impossible. You cannot give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what He's given you. So just do your best. Put your best foot forward. And subhanAllah, at the end of the day, that's what gets us into paradise. It's not going to be our raggedy salah. Right? And subhanAllah, it's extremely beneficial to contemplate upon how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and at the same time to take moments for yourself and to scare yourself a little bit sometimes. Right? To actually scare yourself and to say, man, I've got to move. And if we look at Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah ta'ala, we talked about him a lot today. He lived a life where he was pretty fearful of Allah, right? What Ali al-Madini said, عرفت رجلين خلق ليكون من أهل الجنة ومع ذلك كان يظنان أن النار قد خلقت لهما, that there were 2 men that were created for paradise, but they used to act like hellfire was created just for them. And who were the 2? Umar ibn Abdul Aziz and Imam Hassan al-Basri. Right? They were created for Jannah. You looked at them, you said, Jannah. Easy, VIP access to Jannah. These guys are in. But at the same time, they acted like hell was created for them. When Umar was dying, was he fearful or was he hopeful? Extremely hopeful. Happy, full of joy. Reciting these ayats, about the angels coming to him and just the happiness that he had on his face. He was comforted. And subhanAllah, Imam Ibn Kathir rahimahullah narrates one of the qawl of the Salaf, one of the sayings of the Salaf, I forgot which one of the scholars it was. But he said that the believer lives this way. So we know Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said that the believer lives like a bird. The body of the bird is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the 2 wings, hope and fear. Consistently between hope and fear, right? Which one should be more, the hope or the fear? Raise your hand if you think you should have more hope in Allah than fear. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you think you should have more fear than hope. Okay. you're both right and you're both wrong. Okay? Because there's a time for this and there's a time for that. And the Salaf, they used to say, أثناء حياته يفوق خوفه بالله من رجاءه منه. Throughout your life, you should have a little bit more fear than hope. وحين يحتضر, and then when احتضار comes, احتضار is when you're dying, those moments before you die, يفوق رجاءه بالله من خوفه منه. The hope comes back and it actually supersedes the fear. Why is that? If you've got an extremely easy professor, you guys are taking finals, and you bank on that professor being easy, and you don't study the way you need to study because you say he's easy anyway, what happens when you take the exam? You end up flunking because you took it for granted, right? You said, oh, it's an easy professor anyway, whatever. Well, it's just art class, Then you ended up taking the exam and it wasn't a piece of cake like you thought it would be because you didn't even bother to read the study guide that looks like a middle school study guide, that they gave you because you said, oh, it's easy anyway. I remember this stuff, right? But if you study hard as if that is the hardest professor in your university, you study for that test. The minute that you sit down and you look at that test, what do? Oh man, this is easy, right? Just go through it, piece of cake. As soon as you see the test, before you start, it's not after the test, it's when you see the test and you realize that you were ready for it anyway, you were prepared, you acted like you actually had a possibility to fail, but you had in your mind, in the back of your mind that, I'm not going to fail this test. He is an easy professor, but you didn't bank on him being an easy professor. Likewise, when you deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't bank on Allah being Rahman Rahim to a point where you don't do anything. No, you know what? Act like you're going to hell and you need to get out. And whenever you're dying, you will be able to sit there and you will be able to say, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Allah's Rahman Rahim and I tried. Like Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, when he was dying, he said the beautiful qasida. He said that, oh Allah, I know I have mountains of sins, but when I compared a lot of my sins to a little bit of your mercy, I found that your mercy is much more than my sins. Smiled and died. Those are the last words. He was a poet, rahimahullah ta'ala, even his last words were poetry. I knew a little bit of your mercy is enough for a lot of my sins. I'm good. I feel good now. Right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you that comfort, so the hope is more than the fear at that point. But you should have a sense of urgency. And inshallah ta'ala, in the class that I'm going to do actually with Al-Maghrib, which is behind the scenes, February 8th through 10th, is that it? February 8th through 10th at University of Houston. We go in a lot of detail about how to break the habit of sinning. Right? It's a very intense class on spirituality. It is very different from any other class that I teach. An intense practical course on spirituality and how to break the habit of sin. This is just the concept, right? I'm just giving you abstract things. Alright, but so there needs to be an understanding here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most merciful, but you have to change course, you have to make an effort. And a lot of times our tawbah has so many strings attached, it's not even funny. So for example, I want to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to make tawbah, but I still want to have this in my life. Like, you're in a haram relationship, I feel bad, astaghfirullah, but I need to marry that person. I gotta marry that person. Gotta marry that person. Right? Your tawbah is conditional. You don't have strings attached to your tawbah. When you turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you change course and you repent, you don't allow yourself to make excuses for yourself and you don't attach strings to your tawbah. Allah has already made things quite easy for us. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And you know what? When you look at that man who burned himself to ashes, who cremated himself and Allah got him into Jannah, don't ever, I'm talking about now to the religious MSA crowd, don't you ever look down at another human being and say that Allah is not going to forgive that person. I don't care who he is or who she is. Don't you ever allow yourself to fall into that mistake. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says that the Prophet ﷺ said, this is in Bukhari, there were two men from Bani Israel. One of them, a worshipper, and he had a brother, and he used to always encourage his brother, right? To do things, to pray and to come to the masjid and to avoid, the haram and those types of things. And he'd always get on top of him. And one time the brother said to him, have you been sent as a raqib over me? Did Allah send you as a watcher over me? And he said, Wallahi, لَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكَ أَبَدًا. He said, Allah is never going to forgive a person like you. And Rasulullah said, when Allah raises those two people on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say to the man who made that statement, did you have any knowledge about who I'm going to forgive and who I'm not going to forgive, and who's going to heaven and who's going to hell? And he says, no. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so bear witness that I have forgiven him and I am punishing you for what you said. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said, Wallahi, لَتَكَلَّمَ بِكَلِمَةٍ أَوْبَقَتْ بِهِ دُنْيَاهُ وَآخِرَةً. He said a word that destroyed his dunya and his akhirah. Don't you ever look at another person and say, Allah's not going to forgive that person, or start having su'a dhan in that person, negative thoughts about that person, suspicion in that person. Oh, that person is like this and that person is that. They don't care about Allah. They don't love Allah like I do. What are you talking about? You don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. And you don't know where Allah's mercy will fall on the Day of Judgment. So it's important for us to worry about ourselves when we're talking about this topic. First and foremost, worry about yourself. Right? Changing course for yourself. We've all got our mistakes to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with. So inshallah ta'ala with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop. I like discussion, so I'm going to open it up to discussion. Inshallah, I'm going to sit down. And you're welcome to raise your hands and ask questions. Do we have index cards? No? Okay, just raise your hands inshallah ta'ala and ask them. No holds bar Q&A. No beating around the bushes. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
What 3 tips would you give us to get it done?
3 tips.
What 3 tips would I give you to get to Jannah? Want, ask, act. Want it, ask for it, act for it. Simple, right? Simple answer to a simple question. Want it, sincerely desire it, ask Allah for it, and make an effort for it. It's a simple equation. Anybody else? Easy question. Yeah.
From your life experiences, what keeps you driving towards like having acting upon the religion and just being motivated to keep continuing? Because a lot of times I guess we have like ups and downs within our spirituality and stuff, but what keeps you motivated from your life experiences to keep going forward?
What keeps me motivated from my own life experiences to keep going forward? I'll answer that with a different answer, inshallah. So aside from my life experiences, let's just say what keeps a person motivated. Several things. Number one, understanding that no matter how bad you are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful enough for you. The other thing, spiritual consistency in your actions. Your iman can't be spontaneous. It can't be, I feel good right now, so I'm going to do some good things. Having some consistent actions in your life, a bare minimum in your life that you fall back on. So for example, I'm going to read 10 pages of Quran a day, and when I feel good, I'll read 20 pages. But 10 pages, I don't care how bad my day is, I'm going to do 10 pages a day. There's a new project called 19 ayat a day. You take the entire Quran, and actually it's a trend on Twitter right now. 19 ayat a day, started by a good friend of mine. That at the bare minimum, you read 19 ayat of Quran a day, so you finish the Quran in a year. You know, we know the Salaf used to finish at least once a month. Take those 19 ayats, write your reflections on Twitter, right? But the point is that some form of consistency in your life. When you have consistency in your life, a bare minimum in your life, then even when you're down, which is only natural, you won't be down to a point where you're sinful. So that's what's important. Again, we talk about it a lot in class. Look, for this class coming up, inshallah ta'ala, for this behind the scenes class, I'm not exaggerating when I say that it's life-changing. I promise you it's life-changing. I guarantee you. Ask anyone that's been to Dallas for the class. I know some people went from Houston to Dallas. Ask them. It is a life-changing class. Alhamdulillah, not because I'm teaching it, but because the material is absolutely life-changing. It's from Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah when he talked about destructive flaws. He talked about it scientifically. That's why. So make your effort to attend, inshallah. Anybody else? Sisters, questions? Yeah. Okay, keeping a constant iman rush. Keeping your iman high. The first part of the answer is obviously same answer to brother, that you have to have spiritual consistency, some actions that you always fall back on. Other than that, you need to keep an environment that is always conducive to an iman rush. Okay, as much as you can. Weekly halaqas. You guys live in Houston, alhamdulillah, there's stuff going on all the time in these big cities. Right? So consistently engaging yourself, consistently creating that environment where your iman can consistently flourish. Being in a gathering where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned, you naturally feel better, you naturally feel good. Even if it's, even if you're not paying attention fully to the speaker, whatever it may be, you just naturally feel better when you're in an environment where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being mentioned, and there's ahadith being mentioned and things of that sort. So creating that environment. And also, I'd say trying to do, I really don't know how to put this too well, but trying to keep yourself engaged with good work in terms of charity and volunteerism also, and those types of things. So activism, really when you're acting upon your faith and you're relating directly ayat and ahadith to what you're doing, you're always living that Qur'an. And by the way, that's why when Waqi' told Imam al-Shafi'i, شَكَوْتُ إِلَى وَقِيعٍ سُوءَ حِفْظِي فَأَرْشَدَنِي إِلَى تَرْكِ الْمَعَاصِي فَقَالَ إِنَّ عِلْمَ اللَّهِ نُورًا وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُعْطَى لِعَاصِي. Where Shafi'i says, I complained to Waqi' that I'm losing my memory, and he told me stop sinning. And he said the knowledge of Allah is light and it's not given to a disobedient person. What he meant by that is that when you are consistently applying something in your life, you're more likely to keep it in your memory. Right? When you're relating an ayah to a daily portion of your life, or a hadith to a daily portion of your life, you're more likely to retain that in your memory. The Qur'an, when you are living the Qur'an, you're more likely to retain it in your memory. Okay, because it's weighing heavily on your mind and on your heart because you're acting upon it at that moment. And so that's what made the Sahaba so incredible. Abdullah Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, we read 10 ayat, understand the ahkam and the rulings within, we would memorize them, we'd apply them, and then we move on to the next 10. So that's really what it is, just trying to, after every class you take, after every halaqa you hear, and this is just life advice, by the way. You need to sit with yourself and ask, okay, how do I apply this to my life? Have a discussion on your way home with your friends, whatever it is with your family. How do I apply this to my life? How do we apply what we learned? Whether it's a convention, a conference, take those, a lot of times the notes are just like points of interest or benefits and things of that sort. It's not about what can I do now to change my life? What can I do now to apply this material in my life? So that's really what I'm aiming at. Again, how can I relate this to my life now? Good questions? Yeah.
You're told that Allah is forgiving and you ask Allah for forgiveness anytime you can. What is one key to forgiving yourself? Because at times
it's a great question.
But you're able to forgive yourself.
Great question. That's actually the Friday session, by the way, of the class is all about that question. Because many people don't realize that. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you, but many times you don't forgive yourself for things that you've done. Look, if you look at the Sahaba, some of them did some terrible things before they became Muslim. When I say terrible, I don't mean like they went out on a date. I mean like murdered somebody. Or stole something, right? They had terrible things that they did in their lives. And shaitan is the one that tries to make you despair. You have to understand that if Allah has forgiven you, then it's not worth holding a grudge against yourself. You're not going to get anywhere with that feeling of guilt. That guilt should motivate you. And that's the idea here. Guilt is not a bad thing if it motivates you. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu talking about that. He said, I seek refuge in Allah from a generation that will come that's born into Islam, that never experienced Jahiliyyah. They never experienced ignorance, so they don't appreciate Islam. I find that very powerful because you know who the best Muslims are? The converts. We always say it, right? People convert to Islam, they change their lives. They are more dedicated and committed than any born Muslims are. Why? Because they've lived away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they use that guilt. They know I've got many years to catch up on, whatever maybe. They use that to motivate themselves. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said that a sin that brings you back to Allah is more beloved to him than a good deed that takes you away. A lot of people, on the way to becoming religious people, become crappy human beings. Okay, they they think because they write a check or they go to the masjid and they do these things, mashallah, I'm untouchable. So they're not actually motivated people, right? They actually become very bad people, which is funny, on the pretext of salah and those types of things. The good deed deludes them and takes them away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas some people, a sin, a really bad sin that they committed, was the best thing that ever happened to their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of that sin they never want to go back. They never want to experience what it was like to be that far away from Allah again. It was miserable. They felt guilty about it. But at the same time, they used that as motivation, right? Like you find, and this is psychology here. I mean, you find people that are former drug addicts, right? And they dedicate their lives to helping other people overcome their addictions and things of that sort. So you make progress, you move forward with you let that sin motivate you. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu let his dark past motivate him. It moved him towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He didn't sit around and not do anything because he said, I'm hopeless, man. I've done a lot of bad stuff in my life. It's not that he forgave himself. I mean, he was guilty. He felt guilty about it. But at the same time, he used it as positive fuel. And that's the idea here. Let that be the catalyst for your repentance. Yeah, feel guilty about it. Look, we read about the Sahaba. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he used to pass by a place and he used to always break down crying. And they said, why are you crying? He said, because I remember I disobeyed Allah here. But Sufyan al-Thawri became one of the most amazing scholars in history. He used that as motivation. So use your dark past as motivation to never go back to that darkness again. So forgive yourself, but don't become complacent and don't become passive. So just don't let it become unhealthy to a point where you're just sitting, you're not doing anything, you're not moving forward. Okay, so anything that moves you forward, anything that fuels progress is healthy. Anything that fuels regression or idleness is not healthy. Does that help? But that's the Free Friday session, by the way, on that class. It really is, because people don't understand the danger of self-pity. It kills you. It kills all of your enthusiasm and motivation. It stops you from doing anything. Anybody else? Questions? Yeah.
Is there a hadith in which Prophet ﷺ said only one out of 1,000 people from his ummah were presented?
Yeah, but that's referring to Ya'juj and Ma'juj. The completion of that hadith is that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are 999. So, it's not as bad as it sounds. Yeah. What's that? One more question.
How would you advise someone who going to some misfortune refuses to see Allah's mercy?
How would you advise someone that's going through some misfortune and refuses to see Allah's mercy in them? You know what? There are a lot of things that would happen in your life that you don't have an answer to. But to take comfort in knowing that there is someone who does have the answer to it, rather than saying that there is no answer to it, can be a lot more healthy for you. So, I mean, it depends on the particular tragedy, the particular crisis. But what is the point of sitting around and dwelling? And subhanAllah, here is my question. Have you ever met an atheist that was at peace? Had sakina, tranquility in their lives? Not tranquility in their lives. Look at online forums and their manner of speaking. Atheists are generally miserable people because they've decided that there is no answer to anything. There's no one who has the answer, so they drove themselves deeper and deeper. And so eventually, Edward Young, who's a professor at Princeton, he ran a lie detector test on atheists. 300 atheists. He took 300 atheists and asked them if they believe in God. And out of the 300, I think 93%, 92 or 93% failed the test when they said no. They believe in God, but they're angry at God. Okay, so the idea here is that you wouldn't be, you wouldn't be arguing with him if you didn't believe in him. You're arguing with him. Sometimes it's like a really stupid reason. Like you see a lot of people that become gods in their lives and stuff like that. Start wearing black makeup and piercing themselves in weird ways. And why? Because Dad didn't buy me a PlayStation. Or my dad didn't buy me the car that I wanted. And that's what it's. And they end up shooting heroin up and stuff like that. And those types, like, it's just like stupidity. You see some people that had some serious issues in their lives, right? And one of the beauties of Islam is that it gives you a sense of tranquility. And it's important to build, when you build your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before the misfortune hits, you're able to weather the storm. The problem is that most people are told to develop a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after the tragedy has struck. So it's like you're coming to a person that didn't have patience, that wouldn't have patience with his cell phone breaking. And then, he breaks his, he goes through a major crisis in his life, and you go up to him and say, have sabr. It's like, dude, he wasn't able to have patience with the most minor things in life. How do you expect him to have patience with the major things in life? And that's why you build yourself for those moments, right? When you build a strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can weather the storm. So my advice is build that relationship so that the next time because life is full of misfortunes. Okay? There's going to be some, and no matter what spin you put on it, there's always going to be, you're going to face negative things in life. You cannot achieve absolute happiness in this dunya with dunya. We talked about today Abdul Malik ibn Marwan's kids, right? Hisham ibn Abdul Malik had a very interesting incident happen. Hisham ibn Abdul Malik had a dream that all of his teeth fell out. So he called the dream interpreter. He told him, "Look, I had this dream that all my teeth fell out. What does it mean?" And he told him, "That means that your entire family is going to die. Everybody's going to die in your family, and you're going to see each and every single one of them die." And he got so upset that he wanted to kill the man. So he didn't like his dream interpretation. So he got another dream interpreter. And he told him, "I had this dream, what do you think?" He said, "Abshir ya Amir al-Mu'mineen." He said, "Congratulations, O commander of the believers. You're going to live a long life. You're going to outlive everybody in your family." And he was happy. And his guards were like, "He said the same thing." He just put a positive spin to it. And that's exactly what life is. I mean, when you have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're able to see things in a positive manner. So build that connection, make it strong. Right? As this is what it is. Imagine how, and this is why the scholars, they say that there's Jannatul Yaqeen and Jahim al-Ghurur. The Jannah on earth is certainty, because there is no calamity when there is certainty, and hell on earth is being deluded from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ghurur. When you don't understand, when you don't have purpose, and you don't have meaning, you don't know what's going on, and why is this happening, and you're consistent, you think this is it. So you're under this delusion that you can achieve absolute happiness in this life, and no person ever has achieved absolute happiness in this life. It doesn't happen. This life wasn't meant for absolute happiness. Whatever it is that gives you happiness in life gives you the same extent of misery in life. Right? Whatever gives you happiness gives you misery. That's just the way it works in life. So, having purpose and meaning in life allows you to see through things. Because you understand it doesn't end with death. And that's the issue there. So it's at the end of the day, it gets back to the basics, building a strong personal relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salah is not enough, sadaqah is not enough, all of those things are not enough if there is no personal relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you can weather the storm. And that yaqeen does wonders for you. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. The one who turns away from remembering me will have a suffocating life. When they say, "I feel like the world is choking me, I feel like I'm suffocating," Allah uses that same word. It's like the walls are caving in, they're closing in. I'm suffocating. Because you turned away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what I would say is get back to the basics and have a strong personal relationship with Allah, and take more comfort in knowing that, someone does have the answers, and there is wisdom, and there is reason, I will be rewarded. And Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu said there's a type of patience that's not rewardable, and there's a type of patience that's rewardable. There's a type of patience that you have to have regardless. Meaning what? somebody steals your car, for example, and I'm not wishing that on anybody, I hope none of you had your car stolen tonight, but somebody steals your car, you're going to have a level of patience in the sense that, look, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to wait for a ride, you're going to have to file a police report. That's a level of mandatory patience. It's not rewardable. The type of patience that's rewardable is when you say, Alhamdulillah, there's a reason for that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me something better. That's the rewardable patience. So that's what really counts. When you start to seek the reward in your times of hardship and misfortune and know that the world this is not all of it. And that's how you achieve happiness. We've been deluded consistently into thinking that happiness can be achieved in dunya. No person achieves happiness in dunya. No celebrity achieves happiness in dunya. When you're under that delusion, you've worked in accordance with it. And then you get to the top of dunya and then you realize that it sucks just as bad, if not more, as when you were poor and didn't have much. Then you just kill yourself. That's why celebrities are always found dead in bathtubs or behind 7-Elevens or something. Or murdered or whatever it is. Right? It's hollow. There's no meaning to their lives. So find meaning. Get back to the basics. Any other questions, sisters? No? Yeah.
When after making the scene, like the person tells around the people, so what kind of punishment? Isn't that,
Can you say that again, sister?
It's like, after the making scene and then tells around the people.
After the
Making the scene.
making a scene?
Yeah.
A sin.
A sin.
Scene, yeah.
Okay. And then?
And telling to the
Boasting about the sin.
Yeah.
So there's two things here. Boasting about your sin. Telling when the hadith talk about telling your sins, exposing yourself, Allah covers you in the night and then you expose yourself in the day, or Allah covers you in the day and you expose yourself by night. This is talking about the context of boasting. So you're proud of your sins. Okay, so you're telling people these sins with shamelessness. But it should not be mistaken for the elephant in the room, ideology, which is that if there is a sin that I'm not able to battle and I need help, seeking help for that sin does not fall under the same category. So so for example, I'm struggling and I'm going to go to an imam, I'm going to go to my parents, I'm going to go to a close brother, a close sister and say, look, I need your help. I need to get over this. That's not boasting at that point. That's seeking help for it. So that's the difference between the two there. We're done? Alright, Jazakumullah khair, guys. I'll see you all at Texas Dawah Convention. Islam, Future and You. December 22nd to 24th, inshallah. And then I hope to see you all at the class, inshallah, February 8th through the 10th. Jazakumullah khair.